Today I want to teach you how to get the perfect color and the perfect swirls for a charcuterie board like this one that I just made. I started with the piece of wood that is sealed and I use a penetrating epoxy for that, and then I'm going to use 4 colors. This is my 2 primary colors. It's a kind of like a metallic brown color, and then I have a forest green color. And I realized the light is terrible here because they look all washed out and the green looks blue, but I promise you that is a dark opaque green, and then the other one it's like a metallic brown. Now this color over here, this is my 3rd color, and I call this my blending color. I call it the blending color because it is very transparent and it's kind of a mixture but between the 2 other colors together. This color kind of looks reddish, but then if you swirl it has some green tones in it, so I feel like this color will be my blending color and bringing all the colors together. So I have 2 opaque main colors. One of them it's a metallic brown and the other one it's a deep dark green. Then I have my blending color, which I showed you, and it's that reddish greenish tone, and that is very transparent, so not opaque at all. And then also I will have an accent color which will be a gold color, and you will see that in a little bit. Right now I just made sure that I lifted my wood a little bit, let the epoxy run under the pieces of wood just to make sure it fills in any voids that are on the other side of the wood. This ancient redwood does have a lot of voids and cracks, and I put the weight on the big piece and the weight didn't really fit on the tiny piece, so I have to come up with a more creative idea. Now when I'm pouring this epoxy, you can see I'm not just mixing it all together. I want to make the fine puddles of color. So the colors are going to be pretty separated. As you can see on the right side of the screen we have this deep dark green, but then on the left side we have the golden brownish tones, and I add some of that red tone, and then I realized that maybe I wanted a little bit of green on that side, so I will add more. And I'm just gonna let you see it here for just 1 second and see me pour these colors, see my technique, see how I'm not really mixing them all together. I'm just kind of pouring them what I think is going to look good in the end. And also I'm pouring most of the epoxy on top of the wood and let it slide off the wood. That way it kind of prevents those bubbles that you get where the wood meets the epoxy. Kind of slowly pours in and just it doesn't trap as much bubbles. It's been my experience. And by covering the top completely, also because I said this wood has a lot of cracks and voids, I'm gonna make sure that I completely fill those. The board that you saw in the very beginning of this video and in the thumbnail, it's a different board that I finished a few days ago, and that one, after I sanded, the wood itself had some cracks in it, and then I had to mix more epoxy and fill those cracks. So for this time I wanna do it all in one go. So I'm almost done pouring the 3 colors, the 2 main colors that are opaque and the one that is transparent. You see this one here, you can clearly see through it. It's almost clear, but it does have that reddish hue. As I said, I call this the blending color. And then I will get my gold color, which is my accent color, and this one it's pigmented, but it's a lot less volume because it's very overpowering. As you can see, it doesn't take much to really look like a golden star on top of the Christmas tree. So this one I'm kind of drizzling all over the board, but I'm not gonna lie to you, this kind of freaked me out when I saw how much gold it looked on that left corner there. So what I did, I went and mixed some more green. I found this piece of wood that I covered with duct tape, and I think this will help to hold my weight in place there. And you know, I'm just putting on top of that tiny piece that I couldn't put a weight on it before, and now my weight will sit on it. And at this time I'm like praying that that thing is stable enough, it's not gonna just come splashing down into my epoxy. Epoxy is looking pretty terrible right now. It looks like, you know, like a crazy person color, but I'm moving around the epoxy just above the wood just because I wanted to make sure it gets in every crevices and all those cracks. I'm not trying to disturb the epoxy that is next to the wood because I want that to happen naturally. I'm just manipulating the one that's on top of the wood. And like I said, I mixed more green because I didn't like that gold blob there, so I'm just adding a little bit more, and I don't have to blend it in because, you know, nature will do its thing, and as the exothermic reaction will happen, it will blend and that gold will be almost completely gone. So I'm putting the green into a few more places where I thought maybe I put a little bit too much gold, just to tone it down a little bit. And again, I'm moving it with this popsicle stick, and the primary goal of this is to just make sure that all those cracks and there's no bubbles into the gaps. And then I'm using a heat gun. Now the heat gun, it's at very low power and not very hot, so that way it doesn't move the epoxy too much. Very little air is coming out, just enough to pop those bubbles. And I should also mention that the epoxy I chose for this project is a very slow curing epoxy. It's a 3-to-1 epoxy, so it is very thin, so I don't need to use this heat gun to pop the bubbles, because this will take multiple days until it cures. So the bubbles are gonna come out by themselves and pop. So technically I wouldn't need to use this heat gun, but I'm using it just for a little bit. And now here is where I started the time lapse, so you can see how this process is happening. I'm not stirring any of the epoxy. Like I said, I'm just letting that exothermic reaction to happen. And I realized the light was terrible here, so I'm switching the camera in a second here, because the colors are not accurate in the previous shot. As you saw, things were looking blue and, you know, some transparent looking weird colors, but this is more of what the natural colors look like. And there's the time lapse. The epoxy just does its thing, and it's moving around and it's creating these beautiful swirls that we cannot replicate by ourselves. And once in a while I come in with the heat gun, very low heat, try not to disturb those swirls, just really pop the bubbles, mostly the ones that are happening right next to where the epoxy meets the wood. But as you can see in the clip, the bubbles do pop by themselves, and I do believe they will completely pop even if I didn't use the heat gun. So I'm really loving the way it's shaping it right now. It's like the colors are perfect, the swirls are perfect, and I didn't have to swirl at all. When you swirl it yourself, you tend to be repetitive, so you can definitely tell the people that swirl it. You see those perfect circles and then the line that they drag the stick through, and I'm not a fan of that, so I just let the epoxy do its thing. I should also mention that it has to be a pretty deep pour for this effect to happen. I make a lot of coasters, and those are just about a ½ inch thick, and it does not happen like this. This effect does not happen on thin epoxy that is not a deep pour. This one is over a 1½ inch, or about an 1.5 inches. And look at those beautiful swirls, and I did nothing. I've never touched those colors. Again, the light is terrible. I apologize, but I can't move the tray of epoxy. It's gonna stay there for the next week until it completely cures, and I'll make sure I'll update you guys with the final product. But I'm really loving this effect, and I think you can do it too. You just have to pick the right epoxy, pick the right colors, and don't disturb it. Let nature do its thing. I hope this was helpful to you and you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Skylar Ewing, and I'll see you in my next video.